Disciplinary hearing for SABC head of news Phathiswa Magopeni kicked off today. In November, she was charged with negligence and bringing the public broadcaster into disrepute. Magopeni has disputed the allegations against her and alleges there's a campaign to hound her out of the job. Now, you may recall that just after the local government elections, she was criticized by the ANC's head of elections, Fikile Mbalula, who accused Magopeni of basically decampaigning the ANC through coverage of service delivery issues in various municipalities where the ANC is in charge. To talk more about this and the first day of these hearings, we're joined today by Save Our SABC Coalition Project Coordinator Mpho Ndaba. Mpho, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for being on News at Prime. Does what is going on now bear any resemblance to some of the SABC's past problems?
Good evening to your listeners, Mbekile, and thank you for having me on the program. That's a good question, and I think my answer to that would be that from the perspective of just public sentiment and particularly considering the harm that the Motsoeneng era has done when it comes to the brand and what people think of the SABC, something of this nature happening certainly does give the impression that there is an instability of sorts at the SABC. So it does, but I also think that we need to look at the merits of the case. I'm also very grateful that there are colleagues from SANEF and Freedom of Expression Institute who've really pushed for these hearings to be public, so that we, as members of the public, we get to fully understand as to what is happening exactly at the SABC.
So we'll talk about the merits of the case in a moment. You've just reflected on a very important aspect to the story, because this is a hearing that was supposed to happen behind closed doors. It's now happening publicly. We're all able to watch it. That is transparency by terms of us being able to see what's going on. But do you think it guarantees a fair process?
I think, it's a good question, and it's important, especially when it comes to public institutions. I mean, you earlier alluded to what happened with Motsoeneng and the call for him to repay the money that had been paid to him, or he paid himself that money. It's a good start, and it's a good indication that accountability and transparency can be advanced and can be achieved. But when it comes to this matter, I think we can't fully know whether that can be achieved, particularly because I think in as much as we are able to see what is happening and hear the details of the matter itself, I don't think it's something that one can be certain about. And this is not to say that, this is not my position to say that there's an intention to not be transparent. Mm-hmm. I just think that we have to let the process take its course. At the same time, it's fair and it is honest to say that it is quite disappointing that something of this nature is happening, especially after the efforts to try and ensure that the SABC is stable once again.
And the nub of the issue is that Phathiswa Magopeni, the head of news at SABC, faced these charges of negligence, bringing the SABC into disrepute, because what happened was the current affairs program, special assignment, had been gagged by a court because of certain ethical considerations with the people involved, right? That episode, despite a court saying do not air it, then made it to air. Now, she has argued that it wasn't her decision to put it on air and that the people at channel level should have been involved or taken to task about why it eventually made it to air. Do you think she can completely absolve herself of responsibility ultimately as the person in charge of news content at the SABC?
Look, I mean, in general, outside of Phathiswa, the role of her role, or the role that she occupies, there are expectations and really responsibilities that need to be carried out. And I think what also came out in the hearing was that one of the charges is that she failed to execute her duty. So in general, if I were to answer that question, it is an expectation that something that has to do with programming, particularly because it sounds like it was an editorial issue, it lies with the role itself, the role that she occupies. So I mean, we are interested in seeing how this plays out, because we also have really been calling for tighter ways of working, especially as it relates to editorial policies. And Temekile, I must say that we've been calling for this even after the new board was instituted, because we don't think the work stops, in essence. And I think that's an impression that a lot of people might have, that just because there's a new board, that, we must relax and assume that everything is in order. I mean, of course, we would like to hope so, but, this is one of the instances where, once again, the public is made aware that, listen, I mean, protecting and ensuring that public institutions such as the SABC function to their best of ability, it's constant work, so yeah.
And just on that point then, Mpho, we've been reflecting about how the hearing is happening in public, we're all able to watch, but this is likely to have a bearing on the mood, the feeling inside the SABC, in a newsroom that had for years been the subject of ridicule and, some would say, outright interference by people such as Hlaudi Motsoeneng. So management and the board also needs to be cognizant, isn't it, of the need for a situation management approach to make sure that workers at ground level do not start to feel as though it's a losing battle or they're going back to the old days.
Yeah, look, I mean, yes, you are correct. I think with the new board, as I've said, there was an impression that, things are relaxed, but I think that maybe this is an opportunity for the board to become more transparent, if they haven't been already, and really try and ensure that within the organization itself, because there are people who've been there throughout time, who've seen different boards come in and out, because the SABC has been one of those organizations where there has been lack of stability for over years. I mean, and that also even speaks to the founding, or rather the emergence of SOS Coalition itself. It was a response to the crisis at the SABC in 2007 and 8. So yes, there is a responsibility to ensure that, in as much as the impression from the point of view of the public could be that, well, there is an instability, the SABC itself cannot afford to have divisions within the organization itself, because you have to understand that there are millions of South Africans who rely on this institution, but also the organization itself has been struggling to ensure that it comes back from the rot and mismanagement that has happened over the years.
Mpho Ndaba, thank you very much for your time today. That is Mpho Ndaba, Save Our SABC Coalition Project Coordinator, speaking to us about the start of the disciplinary hearing for the SABC's head of news, Phathiswa Magopeni.